All right, so we're diving into Billionaire Brain Wave, mental habits for wealth today.
Okay.
And, we always hear about these billionaires, right? Like eccentric routines and this almost superhuman focus they all seem to have.
Right.
But what if it isn't all about luck or some secret society or something? What
Yeah.
if it's more about training your mind, like training your mind to think differently?
Interesting.
That's what we're going to unpack today.
Cool.
We're going to explore some of the mental habits this book highlights and see if there's anything we can apply to our own lives, even if we're not all trying to be billionaires.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So what do you think? What stood out to you from the book?
Well, it's fascinating how the book really emphasizes that these billionaires aren't necessarily like geniuses,
Oh, interesting.
but they've kind of mastered certain mental habits that almost act like this operating system.
Like a wealth-generating operating system.
Okay, I like that.
It's like they've got this internal code that sets them up for success.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of habits, one that really jumped out at me was the morning routine stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
Apparently, a huge number of billionaires, like 80%, dedicate at least 30 minutes every single morning to just thinking.
Wow, that's a lot.
No distractions, just pure mental focus.
Yeah, it's not just about waking up early.
Right.
It's about how they use that time strategically.
Mm.
Some visualize their goals, some just consume a ton of information,
Oh, interesting.
and some use it to kind of mentally prepare for big decisions.
So they're like priming their minds to be at their best, basically.
It's like warming up your brain, before the big game.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
But honestly, 30 minutes? I don't know about you, but finding 30 minutes in the morning, that's a luxury I rarely have.
Yeah, I hear it.
And even 5 minutes, right? Like even just 5 minutes of focused thought before things get crazy. Could that actually make a difference, do you think?
I think so, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's about taking control of your day right from the start, instead of just reacting to everything that comes at you.
Right, being proactive instead of reactive.
Exactly.
So those 5 minutes are like an investment in your focus for the rest of the day.
I like that. An investment in focus.
Yeah,
Yeah, it makes you think differently about those morning minutes.
definitely.
So you're not just rushing through your routine, you're setting yourself up for success.
So we've got them up and running now, right?
Oh, wait.
They've had their morning routine, they're focused, they're feeling good.
Yeah.
How do these billionaire minds approach decision-making, do you think? What does the book say about that?
Well, they're really good at separating high-leverage decisions from low-impact ones.
Okay, so what does that mean? High leverage versus low impact.
It means they're always asking themselves, will this even matter in 5 years?
Oh, that's a classic Warren Buffett question, right?
It is. And it's such a powerful filter.
Yeah.
Imagine applying that to your everyday choices, big or small.
Right, like should I hit snooze or should I get out of bed now? Will it matter in 5 years? Probably not.
Maybe not.
So it forces you to look at the long-term consequences of your decisions, which honestly is something I struggle with.
It's something we all struggle with.
Yeah, we tend to focus on the here and now, right?
Right, but billionaires, they're always thinking about how their choices will play out years down the line.
Long-term thinking.
It's not about instant gratification for them. It's about that long-term impact.
And they seem to be pretty comfortable with taking risks too, right? Or at least calculated risks.
Yeah, they're not afraid of a little risk, that's for sure.
The book talks about this idea of thinking in bets, didn't it?
It did. It's a really interesting
What
concept.
did you make of that?
Well, it's like they understand that not every decision is going to be a home run,
Right.
but they're focused on maximizing their chances of success over time.
So it's not about being absolutely certain all the time.
Right.
It's more about making informed decisions based on calculated risks.
Exactly. Weighing the potential rewards against the potential downsides.
So I'm curious. Think about a decision you've made recently, maybe a big one. Could you have used this 5 years filter? Do you think it would have changed your approach at all?
That's a great question. We may have to think about that.
It is a good question.
Yeah, it's definitely food for thought.
Yeah, it really makes you think about how you make decisions.
It does. It's a different way of looking at things.
Okay, so we've got their morning routine, we've got their approach to decision making. Let's talk about this concept of compound growth, because that seems to be another core principle in the book.
Oh, yeah, that's a huge one for billionaires.
How so?
They really grasp this idea that small actions, repeated consistently over time, can lead to massive results.
It's that snowball effect, right?
Exactly. It starts small, but it just keeps growing and growing.
And it's not just about money, right? I think that's the important thing to remember.
Yeah, it applies to skills, relationships, knowledge, anything you can nurture and grow over time.
So it's like investing in yourself, basically.
Exactly. Billionaires understand that investing in themselves and their ventures, even in small ways, pays off big time down the road.
It's about playing the long game, not looking for those quick wins.
That's the key.
I remember that Jeff Bezos quote, "If you're not stubborn, you'll give up on experiments too soon, and if you're not flexible, you'll pound your head against the wall."
That's such a good quote. It really highlights that balance between persistence and adaptability.
Exactly. And I think that's something we can all apply to our lives, no matter what our goals are.
Absolutely. It's about finding that sweet spot between sticking to your vision and being open to adjusting your approach as you go.
So for our listener out there, what's one small habit, one tiny action that you could start today that would have that compounding effect over time?
Ooh, that's a good one.
What do you think? Could be reading for 15 minutes, learning a new skill, making a new connection, anything. What could our listeners start doing today to harness this power of compound growth?
It really is about finding those seemingly insignificant actions that have the potential to snowball into something significant.
Right. It's about consistency and playing that long game.
Exactly. The results may not be immediate, but over time, those small actions can create massive change.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Now, one last thing I wanted to touch on before we wrap up this part of our deep dive is this idea of psychological resilience.
Oh, yeah. That's another big one.
The book emphasizes that billionaires don't see failure as this personal defeat,
Right. It's not a reflection of their worth or anything like that.
but rather as valuable data,
They see it as an opportunity to learn and grow.
like a feedback mechanism, right?
Exactly. It tells them what's working and what's not so they can adjust their approach accordingly.
The book called it strategic optimism, didn't it?
It did.
What did you think of that concept?
It's about being realistic about the challenges you face,
Yeah.
but maintaining this unwavering belief in your ability to find solutions.
So it's not about being naive or ignoring the problems.
No, it's about acknowledging the obstacles, but not letting them paralyze you.
It reminds me of that story about Richard Branson almost losing everything with Virgin Atlantic.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic example.
Instead of panicking, he focused on finding a way out, which ultimately led to one of his biggest successes.
It's amazing how he was able to turn that potential disaster into a triumph.
So for our listener, think about how you typically react to setbacks.
Mm-hmm.
Is there room for a more data-driven, solution-focused approach in your life?
Yeah, that's a great question to ask yourself.
How can you turn those challenges into opportunities for growth?
It's a shift in mindset, really, from being problem-focused to solution-oriented.
And that's a key part of that billionaire brainwave.
Absolutely.
Now, we've covered a lot of ground already, but this is just the tip of the iceberg.
There's so much more to explore.
In the next part of our deep dive into Billionaire Brainwave, we're going to tackle the ethics of this whole wealth programming concept.
Ooh, that's going to be interesting.
Is it really possible to rewire your brain for wealth? And are there any potential downsides to focusing so intensely on financial success? Stay tuned, because things are about to get really interesting.
Can't wait. Welcome back.
Okay, so last time, remember we were talking about Billionaire Brainwave, and we were kind of like looking at all these habits, these mental habits.
Morning routines, the decision-making stuff.
Yeah, exactly. But the book also kind of gets into some ethically charged territory, doesn't it?
It does, for sure.
There's a whole section on the ethics of this wealth programming concept, right?
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you wonder, like, can we really reprogram our brains for wealth? And is it even okay to try?
That's a good question.
What do you think?
Well, the book kind of argues that, we're all programmed to some extent already.
Right, like from our upbringing and stuff?
Yeah, by our experiences, our culture, all that.
So it's saying wealth programming is basically just being intentional about rewriting those programs that might be limiting our financial potential.
Exactly. It's like taking control of the code, so to speak.
Okay, that's interesting.
Instead of just letting it run on autopilot.
But, and this is something I was kind of thinking about as I was reading it, isn't there a risk of becoming too focused on money? Like losing sight of other important things in life.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like relationships, passions, just enjoying the journey, all that stuff.
Right, it's a balance, right?
Yeah.
And the book does acknowledge that risk.
Okay, good.
It emphasizes that wealth should really be a tool, for achieving your goals and living a good life.
Not the end goal itself.
Exactly. It's a means to an end, not the end itself.
Right, so having a balanced perspective on it.
Exactly.
But I also thought, even if you manage to do it ethically, right? Even if you have that balanced perspective, Are there any potential downsides to like constantly optimizing yourself for wealth?
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole section on that, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it talks about things like success anxiety.
What's that?
It's basically this idea that, as you start achieving your goals, you might feel this pressure to keep pushing, to always strive for more.
Oh, so it's like the goalposts keep moving.
Exactly. It's this never-ending cycle of achievement and dissatisfaction.
And that can lead to burnout?
Definitely. To stress, to this feeling of never being good enough.
Like you're always chasing something.
Yeah, and you never quite catch it.
The book also talked about the potential for isolation, right?
It did, and that's a big one.
Like as you become more successful, you might find it harder to relate to people who don't share your ambitions.
Right, or your financial status.
It's like you're in this different world.
Yeah, and that can be really isolating.
So it seems like it's this balancing act, striving for success, but also maintaining a healthy perspective and those connections that ground us.
Absolutely. It's about cultivating a healthy relationship with wealth.
What do you mean by that?
Well, it's about seeing wealth as a tool, not as a master,
Oh, I like that.
and defining success on your own terms.
Not based on what other people think or what society tells you.
Exactly. It's about creating a life that's fulfilling for you, not for anyone else.
So we've talked about the mental habits of billionaires, explored the ethics of wealth programming.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We even dipped our toes into the world of brainwave entrainment.
That was fun.
In the final part of our deep dive, we're going to shift gears and look at the book's practical advice for applying these concepts to your own life.
Sounds good.
Whether you're an entrepreneur or just someone who wants to be more successful in your field, stay tuned.
There's something in there for everyone.
We're going to explore some actionable strategies and insights that can help you unlock your full potential. Okay, so welcome back to the deep dive. Remember, we've been talking about Billionaire Brain Wave, all these mental habits and stuff?
Yeah, all those routines, the ethics of it all.
Right, but let's get practical now.
Okay.
How can we actually apply this stuff to our own lives? Like, what can we take away from all this?
Well, the book actually gives some pretty concrete strategies for developing what it calls a billionaire brain wave.
So not just about thinking differently,
Right.
but actually training your brain to function at a higher level.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so spill the beans. What are the highlights?
Okay, so one of the key techniques is something they call neural pattern recognition and adoption.
Neural pattern what now?
Basically, it's about identifying those subconscious thought patterns that might be holding you back,
Okay.
and then consciously replacing them with more, empowering beliefs.
So it's like rewiring your brain for success.
You got it.
But how do you even figure out what those limiting beliefs are in the first place?
Good question. The book has a bunch of exercises and self-reflection prompts
Oh, okay.
to help you kind of uncover those hidden patterns.
So it's like shining a light on those beliefs that are maybe running in the background, affecting you without you even realizing it.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
So you've identified those limiting beliefs, you've shined that light. How do you actually install those new beliefs, the successful ones?
Repetition.
Okay.
Consistency.
So I have to be patient.
You do. It takes time.
Yeah.
Like anything worthwhile.
Right. The book suggests using affirmations, visualizations,
Oh, yeah. I've heard of those.
and even role-playing sometimes, just to reinforce those new thought patterns until they become more automatic.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So building mental muscle memory.
Exactly. Like anything else you want to get good at, you got to practice.
Practice, practice, practice.
Exactly.
What about that brainwave entrainment stuff we talked about earlier?
Oh, yeah, the binaural beats and all that.
Is that something people can really use, like in their everyday lives?
Yeah, definitely.
That's just like a fancy theory?
No, not at all. While the book promotes its own program,
Yeah, they do.
there are actually a ton of resources out there.
Okay. Like what?
You can find binaural beats and isochronic tones online. There are apps.
So if you're curious, it's worth checking out.
Yeah, for sure.
I was thinking about that.
Even without the fancy tech and stuff, just being aware of those mental patterns, just noticing them,
Yeah.
that feels like a huge step in the right direction.
It really is. Awareness is the foundation of everything.
It's like that saying, the first step to solving a problem is admitting you have one, right?
Exactly. Once you know how your thoughts are shaping your reality, you can start to make conscious choices.
It's empowering.
It is incredible.
But it's not just about thinking differently, is it?
No.
It's about actually taking action.
Absolutely. The book is really big on aligning your actions with those new beliefs.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice?
Well, it's about setting big goals, obviously.
Like billionaire level big.
Why not? But then you break those down into smaller steps.
Right, make them achievable.
Yeah, and then you consistently take action toward those goals even when things get tough.
Turning those billionaire thoughts into actual results.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
I like that.
And remembering it's a journey.
It's not going to happen overnight.
No, there will be setbacks, challenges, but that's all part of the process.
And that ties back into the resilience we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. It all comes full circle.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Billionaire Brain Wave, I'm curious, what really resonated with you from all this?
It's been fascinating, really thought-provoking.
What one idea, one strategy, or insight will you take away and apply to your own life? And for our listener out there, what about you? What will you take away from this deep dive? What are you going to try?
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that we all have this power to shape our reality.
Absolutely.
By understanding these principles, this billionaire brainwave, we can tap into that power.
It's exciting.
It is. It's about creating a life that's truly abundant.
In every sense of the word.
Exactly. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and those goals soaring.